Curling stones only come from two places in the earth. The first one is Ailsa Craig in the Firth of Clyde of Scotland, and the second is the Trevor Quarry on the Llyn Peninsula of North Wales. Because they only come from two places in the world, there's sort of this idea, this doctrine that these rocks are special, they're unique. But is that true? And that really is the basis of my research on curling stones. My name is Derek Leung. I am a PhD student in geology at Laurentian University, and my thesis topic is looking at green micas that are associated with gold deposits. I've been interested in minerals since kindergarten, and I've also had the opportunity to compete in curling at the international level. So it's really a collision of two passions. I've always wondered, what are these rocks that we use? What are they made of? Each curling stone is worth about $800, and so for a facility of 8 sheets, that's about $100,000 worth of curling stones. So that's a lot of money, that's a big investment. And so as curlers, and as the curling community more broadly, we should really understand these rocks so that we know how to maintain them and know how to take care of them for future generations to use. It's really the first study of its kind since 1890, which, a lot of things have changed since then. The way that we look at rocks has changed even. In the 1890s, we had the start of the petrographic microscope, so we were actually able to see thin slices of rock and sort of the minerals within it. But now we have a lot of other things. We've got powdery X-ray diffraction, so we can actually see the structure of the minerals and sort of their abundance based on powders of the samples. We also have computers now, so we can do digital image analysis and actually really quantify some of the things that we see. And the third thing is we also have scanning electron microscopes, so we can really look on a much smaller scale, and we can look at things like the modal abundance, some of the different textures, and also the chemistry of these minerals. There were really three main topics that I wanted to address in my research on curling stones. The first thing is, what are the common features to all four curling stone types? So from Ailsa Craig, there's 2 types of curling stones, and from Trevor, there's also 2. The second question was, so there's 2 parts of a curling stone. There's the running surface, which is on the bottom, and the striking band, which is on the side. So what are the kind of differences in terms of the properties that are required for the running surface versus the striking band? And the third question, which is I think probably the most interesting question in that way, is that a lot of the previous knowledge and also the common knowledge is that quartz is an undesirable mineralogical component in curling stones. And this was really surprising because, all granitoids have quartz, right? And in fact, we find that in curling stones, there's about 15 to 25% quartz, which is a substantial amount. And moreover, this quartz is generally unstrained, so we don't see a lot of fractures or any evidence for that kind of fracturing or deformation process. And so this was really surprising because that is sort of a unique aspect to the curling stones. A lot of people commonly call these granites, but in geology, granite is actually reserved for a very restricted or very specific definition, and it has to do with the abundance of 3 different minerals, 3 very common minerals. So there's quartz, and then there's 2 types of feldspars. There's alkali feldspar and plagioclase feldspar. And so based on these 3 abundances, we can actually classify a rock. And in this case, curling stones are all granitoids, so they're sort of similar to granites in the sense that they have those 3 minerals, but they're not quite that. So in the case of the rocks from Ailsa Craig, those are alkali feldspar quartz cyanites, which means that they have mostly alkali feldspar with a little bit of quartz. And the rocks from Trevor are sort of in between a quartz monzogabbro to granodiorite and maybe possibly going towards the granite field. And so that means that they have more plagioclase feldspar than alkali feldspar, but they also have still a bit of quartz. At the end of the day, I think that there are some characteristics to curling stones that are different than the general granitoid. So for example, curling stones tend to be fine to medium grained, sparsely to a bit more glomeroporphyritic, so they have small grains and a bit of larger grains, and again they have that nuance of the quartz. But overall, we can't consider these properties to be unique to curling stones. I'm sure there could be, in theory, somewhere on the earth that could have a rock with these similar textures. I don't know that for sure, but it's impossible, as a scientist, it's impossible to say that there can't be. Around the 1950s to 1960s, that was sort of when the World War II ended, and there was this post-war curling boom. So all around Canada, we were looking for curling stones. And in fact, that's where a paper from 1951 came in, talking about the physical properties of curling stones. And in the early 1960s to about 1968, there was a curling stone quarry in River Valley that produced curling stones for a very short amount of time, only about 6 years. And now we don't exactly know why they stopped producing the curling stones. There were some reports that maybe they chipped, but I really don't know because I haven't seen any of these curling stones. We do know that they were exported to Quebec and a bit of Eastern Canada. So if you have seen any of these curling stones, please let me know. I was able to later do a research master's at the University of Edinburgh on the damage evolution of curling stones, which was sort of a follow-up study of what I did for my undergrad. I'm actually really lucky to be supported by the Edinburgh Geological Society's MyCura Fund. They supported my fieldwork costs on Ailsa Craig. I'd also like to thank the Society of Economic Geologists Canada Foundation for supporting the research costs associated with my thesis. Right now, I'm doing something that's quite different than what I did for my undergraduate degree and master's degree. So I'm doing a bit of a pivot towards economic geology. So there's these minerals, they're called green micas, and they're usually chromium or vanadium bearing. And they're often associated, at least spatially, with these gold deposits. But we're not entirely sure why that's the case, whether they're related in terms of time and also in terms of their process of formation. So that's what I'm sort of digging into now. But it's really interesting in a way that a lot of the techniques that I used during my undergrad and my master's are also applicable to my PhD. So it really shows the transferability of different skills and different knowledge of topics. You need to like paste a sheet above your head of like all the stuff I'm supposed to say. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Oh.
And my thesis topic is on the
It's awesome. What is it anyway?
What is it anyway?
That PhD thesis.
A PhD student at Laurentian is studying what makes curling stones so unique. You see, whereas some stones are hard, curling stones are hard.